I'd like to save you, but I just remembered something. I have an important tail styling appointment in another warp zone. Bye!
It's the greatest time of year, and it's here. Help me celebrate it. Real talk though, the song kinda slaps. When I was looking through what would be fitting for a holiday themed video, there were two thoughts that flew into my head. So, the world is planning to have the next Winter Olympics soon, and 2 years ago, I took a look at the time that Mario and Sonic first competed in them. So maybe I could go and look at the only other time they did that. And then I decided to review Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games. Man, what a mouthful of a title. So, for those not up to date, 2 years ago I reviewed Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games for the Wii, check the card up top. And for a brief summary, I still enjoyed it as much as I did when it first came out, and I think it's a really solid collection of minigames that's really fun to play alone and with friends, and it was made with way more love and care than it needed. So, with that positive opinion, I was really looking forward to the next one when it was announced. I'm more of a Winter Olympic guy than I am a Summer Olympic guy, not to mention more of a winter person than a summer person, so I was happy to see this follow-up. However, because it came out during a time where I was barely making my own money, I didn't get it. Eventually, when I started making money more consistently, my eyes and ears were eventually dragged to the likes of Hyrule Warriors, the Sonic Boom games, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and most of all, Super Smash Bros. 4. 3 of those I loved, while one of those... maybe another day. Eventually, this game would fall off my radar, thanks to schoolwork taking priority. But all this time later, I finally decided to give this game the time of day. So, as someone who found a lot of value out of a previous title, what do I think of this one? Well, it's time for more Winter Festivities. Looking at the game from a visual standpoint, it definitely made the HD transition quite nicely. The character models are incredibly expressive and detailed. Even if the cinematics are done with in-game graphics, they still look really nice. The color palette is very diverse and vibrant, the game runs as smooth as butter no matter what, and they actually went out of their way to make some victory animations for specific teams of characters. They honestly did not need to do this, but I commend them for actually going out of their way to properly represent these characters. You know what else they didn't need to do? Go bonkers on this soundtrack. Granted, a lot of the music is remixes and music rips, but the rips are dang good choices, and the remixes properly capture the tone and energy of the original tunes. The original tracks also sound great, and really do fit the mood of when they're used, and they go miles in giving the game more personality overall. It definitely has a few shortcomings though, like there are a select few environments that look a tad washed out, especially when it's overcast. The crowd is still made up of flat GIFs, which look even more jarring when put here, and Donkey Kong looks like someone set a wax model of him in his place, but it's harder to notice them with all the good stuff. So for the game itself, likewise with the rest of its kind, this is a collection of minigames themed after the Olympics that more often than not utilize the more technical aspects of the console in question, especially when it comes to motion controls. For events that utilize the Wii Remote, or more specifically the Wii Remote Plus, you'll only be required to tilt in order to influence your sense of direction, which for the most part does feel relatively responsive, though I did have a couple instances where things got weird when it came to it. For some skating events though, there are a few times where you need to waggle for start motions, or flick your wrist in a rhythm, which are pretty standard. But that's only a fraction of the controls for the events, and it's here where I talk about one of the biggest make-or-break aspects of the game, the implementation of the Wii U gamepad. For some reason, Nintendo and Sega decided to make very specific events exclusive to the Wii Remote, and other events, including a select few returning ones, exclusive to the gamepad, like the sledding events, the snowboard events, and hockey. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this design choice. I have no qualms using the gamepad for events like these, not to mention some of the events it's utilized in are a good time, but this just makes it feel more like a gimmick rather than an alternate way to play the game. It's also reinforced by the fact that for a lot of these, you're not doing anything that you couldn't do with a Wii Remote, and if you decide to play one of these events in multiplayer, player 1 has to use the gamepad, while player 2, 3, and 4 can just stick with the Wii Remote. Again, I have no problems with this, except for the fact that a lot of these either feel like you don't have a lot of control over them, like normal skeleton and bobsleigh, or feel incredibly imprecise like most of the snowboarding events. This is not all over the place, but it did pop up plenty of times for it to be a big determining factor into actually getting the game, let alone liking it. For the content itself, every character returns with no newcomers in sight, all working exactly the same as they did previously. Every event is unlocked from the get-go, meaning you can jump into anything that you wish if you're into that sort of thing. The events can either be Olympic sports or dream variations that take the core foundation of a sport and make something new out of it, with a hint of fan service from one of the two franchises. There's a mode called Medley Mania, which lets you tackle a series of 3 or 4 mini-games without restarts, good for those who want a challenge, or just like playing these back to back. You can even create your own medley if you so desire, so you can play whichever ones you like without dealing with the ones you aren't as big on. There's Action and Answer mode, which utilizes a particular playstyle to quiz you on something. I really like this one. As well, it doesn't change up the way you play the game, it does require some keen observation to even the smallest of details in order to get each answer right, although there are times where luck is a big determining factor. Not to mention, characters from both franchises being on a quiz show with Orbot and Cubot as hosts is really charming. Even though we don't have an Olympic tournament mode here like Festival mode from last time, we do have Legends Showdown, which is similar in essence. Here you get to play through every event this game has to offer, using a designated team of 4 for each area. But it's not like there's 5 teams of 4 going up against each other. There are instead these shadow clones that randomly show up and challenge you. Why shadow clones? There's no context for them to be here. They don't really do anything that special. They're not very imaginative, so why are they here? But anyways, each area is basically structured with a few events that you play through before defeating a boss at the end and moving on. Didn't get much out of this mode, sadly. I will admit Mii's on your Wii U friend list showing up to challenge you was worth a good laugh. In my case, it's how I'm going to say that I actually got a cameo from Fawful's minion without him knowing. Thank you, Logan! The bosses are cool, and you do get cosmetics for your Mii, as well as your skis, snowboard, or bobsleigh by doing this mode. But aside from that, there's not much punch or pizzazz to it. Compared to Festival mode from last time, where you actually had the one character or team of characters throughout the whole adventure, as well as actually competing with the rest of the roster, did make it more enticing. Here, it's just the same set of characters for each area against random shadow clones, which takes away a lot of that charm. And the weird thing is, winning events in this mode actually counts towards getting the best medals in single match mode. And since those can be tied to some achievements, the replay value of this game takes a massive hit, as you can just use Legends Showdown to get every gold medal in the game, maybe even beat the best records if you're good enough. Granted, the Mii costumes you get are a good reward, but the custom skis, snowboards, and bobsleighs, for the most part, are not. Compared to last time, where you can actually give them different base colors, different patterns, different banners, and different stickers, here it's basically handled like alternate skins, which is far less interesting. There are a select few I did like, but it felt so much more underwhelming because they oversimplified something that was perfectly fine. And it's not helped by the fact that star points and shops have been removed. While that means grinding isn't an option to get everything anymore, it also does away with the excitement of actually getting something new. I don't feel as incentivized to replay events to get more out of the game, and that feeling gets worse when the minigames themselves actually range in quality. So now this is the part where I go over what I think of each minigame here, though this time I'll cover the Olympic events first, and then the dream events. Alpine skiing downhill is an event I enjoyed last time, and thankfully it's pretty much the same here. Using the Wii Remote to control your sense of direction still feels good, and it is recommended to use the gate dash wisely in order to gain speed in necessary spots. Though here, if you perform a few successful gate dashes in a row, you get a super boost. This kind of boost was present last time, but you can only do it once with the A button. Here, you could do it multiple times, which I think is a good reward for playing really well. Sadly, Giant Slalom was axed, but I'll take what I can get. Ski jumping large hill returns, but it has been reworked entirely. Here, instead of keeping your balance on the ramp and in the air, you now have to successfully charge up a jump using the B button, which is present in other events by the way, jump, and then try to ride wind drafts in order to get the best distance possible. I think this one is okay too, but after a while it just kind of wears out. Wind is still a big factor here, but rather than affect your balance, it only makes the drafts out during the jump stronger. It's still fun, just not one I played over and over. Ski Cross is pretty much the same as it was, but since the skis control really well, my opinion on it hasn't shifted that much. I will say though that while tricks for the skis have been removed, a big way to get speed now is either by gate dashing or by doing jumps in the air before shaking the Wii Remote to land back on the ground. This feels natural with a normal Wii Remote, and getting a good run in just feels satisfying. Moguls also returned, and I'm still not big on it. I do feel like they made an attempt to address my problems with it last time, but my problem here is that now it feels overly automated. I don't feel like I'm influencing the character's sense of direction, I just feel like I'm timing swings to the beat the game wants me to go at. It works, but it's just not very interesting. Still better than Biathlon though, man I do not like this event. For most of it, it goes like a ski cross race, except now you have the stamina meter that refills when you're going down slopes or anything of the sort. But you need to repeatedly climb up these hills in order to stay ahead, which feels slow and clunky. But my biggest problem comes in right about here. Yeah, for some reason, this game suddenly turns into a gallery shooting game where you have to hit 5 targets before moving on. The switch in gameplay style feels very off, not only because I hardly see how well the two go together, but you actually have to switch over from Wii Remote to gamepad mid-game, which is awfully intrusive. Even if this is an actual Olympic event, the game did not sell me on it at all, and in general, this is not fun. Going back to what I said earlier about forcing the gamepad into some events not being a very good idea, this was honestly the cause of the snowboarding events not transitioning well. Balancing using this feels incredibly unnatural, and it feels like this thing lacks the response time the Wii Remote has when it comes to motion, which is pretty bad in each of the snowboarding events, the first of which essentially being alpine skiing, just with snowboards. Now, I'm fine with the concept of snowboard parallel giant slalom, but you're required to go on one side of the gate, and the impreciseness, combined with the ridiculously wide turns, makes the pacing of this event way too slow. And my snowboarding are doing these gate challenges from Team Sonic Racing. Things don't get much better with Snowboard Cross, as ground boosts only work for me sometimes, while other times the game pretended they didn't happen, and tricks have been removed, which takes a lot of the thrill of the event away. But you see, they saved the tricks for snowboard slopestyle, so that's gotta mean this is the best one, right?
No.
Conceptually, this is a cool event, as it does add more style to performing tricks with the snowboard, more so than halfpipe. But all that falls apart once the impreciseness on using the gamepad for motion, and how exactly you do tricks in the air messes with you. How do you do the latter? You press the corresponding direction the game tells you to on the gamepad. You can imagine how unimmersive that sounds, but it gets worse when it takes any potential creative combos you can think of out of the question, and even if you do tricks well, most of the time, the game will not reset your position in time for you to land properly, which you will then get punished for. So in other words, the game deducts points for something that isn't your fault, and it's really frustrating. But with that aside, it's just not a very fun event to go through. The variety is lacking, and it feels like you're following instructions, not actually trying to play the event however you feel like it. Speed skating 500 meters remains untouched, but that's totally okay. I enjoy how much more timing is involved to get the best possible outcome, and the boost you can get by scoring repeated perfects is nice. My opinion hasn't changed on this minigame that much, but that's fine. Same thing goes for short track 1000 meters, although the addition of remaining on a line for a specific amount of time in order to charge up boosts is a good addition. I don't like how most of the matches end up with everyone jumbling together, as it can make results feel random, and the fact that speed is now relegated to how low the Wii Remote is took some time to get used to, but the event is still fun regardless. Figure skating is still figure skating, but there are a few changes. Tiles where you flick the Wii Remote a certain way have been converted to step moments where you need to give any motion in a certain rhythm, and there are these new moments where you have to move your arms up to collect these notes. Guess this is why they asked for a Wii Remote Plus. Overall, I am fine with these changes, but my only problem with the step moments is that the prompts are a little too opaque. I found it a little hard to see them in most instances, so I missed a few notes here and there. But they also added an alternate mode to this one, figure skating duos. Conceptually, not too different from singles, aside from some unique moving moments, and pressing the A button to hold hands while giving you a prompt of a male and a female silhouette holding the same remote. Are you supposed to do that if you're playing this in multiplayer? And if so, how did all that go down? Also, yes, I did pair up Peach with Bowser Jr. for this event, because I'm sure that's what Jr. would want. Sadly, seeing Skeleton and Bobsleigh be relegated to the gamepad is disappointing, but I don't think it took that big of a hit. Since it's an event that's relegated to a straight pathway that only asks you to stay on the line for the fastest results, things are easier to swallow. That I had less control issues overall. Although I think the only reason Bobsleigh is gamepad exclusive is because it uses the camera built into the gamepad. You can see how seriously I was taking this in there. So we get to ice hockey, and I'm shocked to say this, but this is actually one of my least favorite minigames here. At base concept, it seems similar, except for the fact that all your teammates are on the ice at once, and the goalkeepers are shy guys. But for one thing, stealing the puck and body checking can get incredibly messy when you're trying to secure the puck. It becomes hard to tell what exactly is going on, as well as the control feeling like it's locking up from time to time, not helped by the fact that the body check sometimes doesn't work with no explanation. Second of all, the special shots lack any sort of pizzazz. Granted, there is some strategy to where you can shoot it, as they can be stopped, and you can use the gamepad to influence the direction, but stopping one yourself and scoring one doesn't feel as good as you think it would, mostly from the lack of satisfying visual and sound design. And most of all, the event moves a lot slower than previously. The ground speed of everyone is toned down significantly, and everything from passing to shooting just feels sluggish. This version of ice hockey just feels like it's missing something that gives it an edge, and it regrettably gets dull. Curling also feels a lot slower, and I don't like how it hides the meter after you've thrown the curling stone, but using the gamepad to sketch out your plan isn't that bad of an idea. There are select few Olympic events I like overall, but I can't name a single one that I enjoyed more than last time. I can say that there are select few I enjoyed equally, but only a few. The rest are side grades at best, and downgrades at worst. But what about the dream events? Well, I am happy to say that they have a little better when it comes to overall design, but I hesitate to say they completely pick up the rest of the slack. Groove Pipe Snowboard isn't anything that amazing, since it doesn't improve a whole lot from this game's snowboard cross, and again, the lack of tricks really does neuter the thrill, but I do really like how the place you're in is Mushroom Bridge from Mario Kart Double Dash, and the overall level design is remarkably solid. The coins can overall make you go faster, and there's multiple routes you can take to really jump ahead, so it's got that going for it at least. Figure Skating Spectacular pretty much plays the same as normal figure skating, but I really do appreciate how both the Mario and Sonic variants try to give a show calling by a specific game. Granted, I would have preferred they get some of everything like last time, but for shows based off Mario 3D Land and Sonic Colors respectively, they did a really good job with what they had. Though I do not approve of the end of the Mario show being mean to Goombas, and why do we need to use the Final Color Blaster against Rotatotron? A simple laser is enough to trivialize him. Now, to give the game some strong positive credit, Roller Coaster Bobsleigh is a great time. Not only do the gamepad controls for the bobsleigh here feel super tight, but because the track is Speed Highway from Sonic Adventure 1, there's loads of opportunities to gain speed, shortcuts, and moments where the game actually switches to 2D perspective, where all you need to do in order to go faster is align your bobsleigh with the ground when you're in the air. And to top it all off, some of the level set pieces translated really well, almost like you're playing the original level. I actually like this version of Bobsleigh more than any other version across the series. It takes full advantage of the concept, and in general, it's just an immensely fun event. It even gets used for one of the bosses, which is also great. Now for Snow Days Street Hockey. Everything I said about normal hockey applies, sadly. Though to give this one credit, I do really like how you actively switch courts every period, even down to letting each player vote if you're playing in multiplayer, and the Market Street does have some cool gimmicks, like these bounce pads, vendors that spit out bananas if you hit them, and this bonus goal which will give you 2 points if you score in it. I like these ideas, but sadly it's not enough to save hockey in this game, in my opinion. Hole-in-one curling is an event I really want to like. The idea is really clever, using giant curling stones to go golfing in Green Hill with Sonic 4 remixes no less, but sadly it gets mauled by the stones feeling too heavy, and thus getting any sort of distance with them feels way too problematic. The course has way too many rough patches, and the controls for actually throwing the stone are way too sensitive. You're supposed to draw a line in a direction you want to throw in, and draw it harder and faster to gain power and distance, but it doesn't feel natural, and the game also picks up any part of the hand touching the screen as the direction you want to go, completely counteracting what you want to do. That might be a me thing, but I've got big hands and I'm not a great writer. This game told me to draw a line to throw a stone in, and that's what I'm doing. This quirk just messes up the pacing and makes things less fun. But now we get to Snowball Scrimmage. Okay, so in this event, you and a team member go up against 2 other people and shoot each other with these snowball vacuum guns and try to control this ball to one of your goals. Okay. This is just boring. Everything moves very slowly, including the ball. You have to take the long way around to score goals. You take a long time to get up if you get knocked off the ball, which I do get, but it doesn't help the pacing. There's no power-ups. There's pretty much nothing here. This is probably my least favorite event in these games, if only because nothing interesting happens. I only bothered with this for Legends Showdown before never going near it again, and judging by this footage, I don't think you can blame me. Thankfully, these next 2 are legitimately really cool. Bullet Bill Sledge Race has you riding a 2 Bullet Bill sleigh racing around Sweet Mountain from Sonic Colors. The concept alone is really sweet, but the level design and the way the sleigh handles makes it even better. The sleigh doesn't handle that differently from the bobsleigh in hindsight, but if you collect enough blue orbs layered throughout the track, you can do a massive boost which lasts for a while and can give you a good advantage if used right. But once you activate it, it cannot be stopped until the meter depletes, and you cannot prolong it by collecting more orbs while doing it. The level is built with this in mind when it comes to shortcuts, as there are some that can only be accessed by boosting, so there is a layer of strategy to this. It's important to study the level and think about when you can afford to use a boost, or when you need to save it for a shortcut that's not far away. It's not a long course, but with how much effort and love went into it, I had a great time. That just leaves us with the final frontier, the Winter Sports Champion Race. This event is really good too! This is the only event in the game where you have access to skis, snowboards, bobsleighs, and skates all at once. Every time you cross the gate, one will be randomly selected for you, and no matter what, you only need to use a Wii Remote. This does beg the question of, why can't I just use that for the normal variations, but I'm going to stay on topic, because this event takes all that into account in terms of how it's laid out, as the skis and boards do not react well to ice, and the bobsleigh and skates do not react well to snow, so there's a ton of different routes you can take in order to keep the speed going. I really like this, as no method is easily better than the other, it provides different ways of actually playing this event, and it feels like it's giving everything a bit of love for one final hurrah to the finish line. Even if I didn't care for Legends Showdown, this was a strong event to host the final boss on. As you might have noticed, I mentioned a lot more Olympic events than Dream events, and that's because there are only 8 Dream events in the entire game, which is way less than normal. I mean, the ratio of Olympic events to Dream events was always weighed more in the former's favor, but here it's a lot more apparent. Considering Dream events are usually the highlight of one of these games, that is admittedly disappointing. I noticed it more because from my summary of thoughts, I only definitively had a great time with 3 events in this game, and they're all Dream events. And most of the others I liked were done just as good or better last time. Everything here feels far slower, and a lot of what I did like was stripped away with nothing to replace it with. Because of all that, I admittedly got bored while playing this game, especially after finishing Legends Showdown. There's little to do after the fact aside from going for any records you missed, and trying to get all those Mii costumes and alternate skins for your gear, but that's barely anything worth a time sink. I really want to have a more positive opinion on this game than I do, as the fun parts are really fun, and there's plenty of love put into it, but regrettably, I could not get into this. For something cool the game wants to do, it ends up getting muddied by something very stale or mediocre, or something incredibly disruptive. Even with the positives I mentioned, I would honestly revisit the original Winter Olympics far more. Sochi's far from a terrible game, but it's lassoed down by too much that makes it really not worth it in my eyes. It's also unfortunate that this was the only other time they ever went to the Winter Olympics, as the right to make any video games based off the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics was acquired by Ubisoft, which admittedly sounds grosser knowing Ubisoft. And a Mario and Sonic Olympics game based off the upcoming 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics seems very unlikely at this point. If it was happening, they probably would have announced it by now. But they did go on to take part in the Rio 2016 and Tokyo 2020 Olympics, the former being probably most people's least favorite in the series, while the latter is generally said to be quite good, albeit not as good as the original Winter Olympics and London 2012. So I don't know what the sub-series will do from here, but I'll still hold out, and hope that whatever comes next will be a good one. I'm the Lightning Ripper, and I hope you all have a safe time this holiday, and I'll see you in 2020. Wait a minute, this game has an online mode! I forgot! We gotta go see that! Happy holidays, everyone.